jurisprudence of the court. It should not enter into the merits of the case beyond what is strictly necessary for that purpose. I now give the floor to the agent of Azerbaijan, His Excellency Mr. Elnur Mammadov. You have the floor, Your Excellency.
Madam President, honorable members of the court, it is a great privilege to appear before you once again as an agent of the Republic of Azerbaijan, and this time in person. Last week, I provided an overview of the long and tragic history of ethnic cleansing perpetrated by Armenia against Azerbaijan. Today, I stand before you because Armenia's campaign of ethnic cleansing and incitement to violence against Azerbaijanis is ongoing, and provisional measures are urgently required to prevent further irreparable harm to the rights of Azerbaijanis undisturbed. Because the past is prologue, it is necessary to understand some additional details about the historical context in order to understand why Armenia's continuing conduct warrants the indication of provisional measures now. After the expulsion of over 200,000 Azerbaijanis from Armenia's territory in the late 1980s, Armenia's ethnic cleansing campaign extended to Azerbaijan's sovereign territory. Indeed, just across town, here in The Hague, stands a monument to the infamous attack on Khojaly, which led to a massacre of ethnic Azerbaijanis of such brutality that it has been referred to as a crime against humanity and an act of genocide. Armenian forces encircled Khojaly, a town in the Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, and began bombarding it in the middle of the night on the 25th of February, 1992. When Azerbaijani civilians attempted to flee through the woods and into a nearby valley, they were targeted by Armenian forces who intentionally slaughtered hundreds of them, men, women and child, young and old, and took over 1,000 hostage overnight. The tragedy at Khojaly was not an isolated incident. Rather, it was the implementation of a deliberate policy and practice of ethnic cleansing. As Serge Sargsyan, the former prime minister and president of Armenia, has said, and I quote, "Before Khojaly, the Azerbaijanis thought that they were joking with us. They thought that the Armenians were people who could not raise their hand against the civilian population. We needed to put a stop to all of that, and that's what happened." End quote. The list of such tragedies continues to include the towns of Qaradağlı in February 1992, Ağdaban in April 1992, Ballıgaya in August 1992, Başlıbel in April 1993, Fizuli in August 1993. I could go on. These were not military targets. These were towns populated by civilians whose only crime in the eyes of the Armenian forces was that they were ethnically Azerbaijanis. And for this reason alone, they were systematically massacred, taken hostage, tortured, or expelled from their homes. Armenia's campaign of ethnic cleansing before and during the First Karabakh War ultimately resulted in thousands of Azerbaijani civilians killed or injured, and nearly 1 million forcibly displaced, including over 700,000 from the formerly occupied territories of Karabakh and surrounding districts of Azerbaijan. The wounds of this almost 30-year-long occupation run deep. When Azerbaijan finally liberated these territories last year, it found entire towns that had been inhabited by Azerbaijanis razed to the ground, land scarred by environmental devastation and pillage of its natural resources, and thousands of cultural monuments and heritage sites destroyed. In this way, Armenia had sought to cleanse these lands not only of Azerbaijani people, but of all traces of their presence, to ensure displaced Azerbaijanis could never return, because there was nothing to return to. But the only thing that Armenia could not erase is memory. The memory of home for the hundreds of thousands of displaced Azerbaijanis who long to return. Some have attempted to do so after the liberation of these territories last November, only to discover, tragically, that Armenia actively continues to prevent their return through the use of landmines. Armenia not only carpeted these territories with landmines during its occupation, particularly in civilian areas formerly inhabited by Azerbaijanis, it still, to this day, refuses to share complete and accurate maps of the mines needed to progress clearance operations, and even continues to plant new mines on Azerbaijani territory. As a result, at least 160 Azerbaijanis, including 65 Azerbaijani civilians, have been killed or injured since the trilateral statement of 10 November 2020 ended the Second Karabakh War. There is no valid or military or other reason for Armenia to continue to target and terrorize Azerbaijanis in this manner. This is quite simply a continuation of Armenia's decades-long ethnic cleansing campaign, an attempt to keep these territories cleansed of Azerbaijanis in pursuit of some desperate, revanchist design. Provisional measures are warranted and urgently needed to protect against this dire threat. In addition, Armenia continues to demonstrate that it cannot let go of its goal of a mono-ethnic Armenia that extends beyond its borders to Azerbaijani's territory. Not only continuing to pursue the ethnic cleansing of Azerbaijanis to this end, but also continuing to incite hatred and violence against Azerbaijanis by harboring armed hate groups and engaging in sponsoring or supporting disinformation operations to spread false and inflammatory statements across social media. And Armenia has failed to investigate or prosecute not only these third violations, but any of the numerous credible allegations of racial discrimination against Azerbaijanis, including ethnically motivated acts of torture and other war crimes committed during both wars and the occupation, some of which were captured on videos and widely disseminated on social and traditional media channels. But Armenia, unlike Azerbaijan, has not taken steps to preserve the evidence, investigate, or otherwise bring the perpetrators of these vile hate crimes to justice. As the drafters of CERD recognized, it is a short step from racist hate speech inciting violence to acts of violence carrying out those threats. Xocalı, Qaradağlı, Ağdaban, Ballıqaya, Başlıbel, Füzuli. I say these names again before the world's highest court, not because Azerbaijan seeks today a remedy for past injustices, which it will address in the later stages of this case, but because it seeks the court's urgent assistance to protect against the harm that continues. I say them here today because, in the words of the great Azerbaijani poet Nizami Gencevi, without speech, the world has no voice. I say them to give voice to the victims, so that perhaps today what was past need no longer be prologue. Madam President, honorable members of the court, Azerbaijan's distinguished council will now address our request for provisional measures to explain why an order indicating each measure is warranted and urgent